Welcome back to another episode of Odd Socks. Right, as you can tell, it is extremely cold out here today. At the moment, it is -4. Now, if you had any sense, you'd be inside right now. But again, I'm still trying to work through all the little bits of jobs that I can get done at this time of year to prepare me for the new growing season. Now, as you can see, there's lots of frost over loads of the items here at the moment. But I thought today I would show you some of the things that I've actually got up to and to what stage I'm actually at. Now, there is still some clear up, but we are still building, and we were really hoping to start building the Polytunnel this Sunday. But the weather forecast doesn't look that good. So that might be the week after now. So until I can get these building projects out the way and actually finished, I can't actually move the wood around too much, because we will need these little bits and pieces that we actually have got lying around. But what we can do is move some of the stuff that we know we probably won't be using. So for the next growing season, I actually want to use netting as least as possible. Now, it's not always the case. And we have a lot of foxes and other animal damage, never mind the butterflies on certain plants that causes damage, especially on the brassicas and other things that can cause issues. So we do net an awful lot, but it's really, really depressing when you see all these beautiful flowers and beautiful produce being grown and it's all covered by netting. So I'm trying to plan it this year so we only have 3 areas of netting, just so we can actually see clearly the whole of the plot. Now, it doesn't mean I want to lose my crops, so I'm going to have to plant very carefully in the right areas. And that's what my future plans over the next month or so will actually entail, how I'm going to grow it with the least amount of netting as possible. So one of the jobs I have pretty much almost finished is the inside of my greenhouse. Now, you saw me build this on a previous video, and at the moment it's incredibly frosty, but I've managed to create some areas in here where I can pot using this tray so I don't get mud and dirt everywhere, and then plenty of areas for the seedlings to actually go. At this time of year, I won't be putting any seedlings in here until about February. That's when we really start to actually grow things. The only things I will be starting is my chilies, and I'm hoping to start those over the next couple of days because I'm so behind with my chilies. Normally I like to start them the first week of January, just so we can get enough of a growing year out of them. And I'm trying a lot new varieties this year, so I really want to give it a go and give them as long a start as possible. But I will need to have heat and I will need to have light. But everything else should, in theory, be sown later on in the year. Now, it's not the tidiest yet, but I'm getting there. Now, I've started to organise all my pots and put them into the trays, and I've got areas for all my seedlings to go. Now, I will add more space in here, but it is a very small greenhouse. So I'm just going to have to wait and see what else I can actually build. So at least that's one less job that I really do have to be worried about. And it's a good start to the growing season. I think another small table here. This is very rickety and it won't really support much. But just a slim table there will give me even more great growing space to get all my seedlings potted and sown later on this year. So at least that's something that's now done. So another area that we've kind of done for now at least is created in the old potato patch a couple of new beds. Now again, they're very slim, but these will be expanded later on in the year as we develop more and more compost. It's wide enough to have a half decent crop of something this year, but as we go on, these will be made a little bit bigger giving us a much wider space to actually grow in. Oh, and this area that I'm studying now is going to be where the new polytunnel is going to go. Now, the little bits of scraps of wood that we've got at the moment, I've been cutting them down and using them for the little projects. Whoops! Now, the little scraps of wood that I've got going around, I'm going to be using them for little projects. Now, I've been cutting them up as I've been going along, reducing, and I've already done about 15 pallets. Now, I've only got a handful left, and I've got a small pile just over there of scraps. Most of them will be used, but the rest will be burnt. Now, we have had a nice bit of a burn going on before we put the polytunnel up, because after the polytunnel comes up, we're going to be really lacking in areas to actually burn. So we're trying to do it as much as we possibly can before the polytunnel goes up. But the polytunnel will be going from north to south on this particular polytunnel. Now, I wanted it to go east to west, but with the layout of the allotment and trying to fit everything in, we thought that this way was going to be the best option. Now, it's quite, there's no trees behind it, there's nothing to seclude any of that light, so I'm really hoping that it'll be absolutely fine. Like I said, hopefully we were going to do this on Sunday, this coming Sunday, but I think with the way the weather is getting warmer, which is great, it's going to be getting wetter and also more stormier. The wind is going to really start blowing a gale again. So it might be something that gets put off for another week, maybe even more. But I really wanted it up and going before the end of February, just so we know exactly what we're doing where. But we have a plan, and hopefully that plan works out. Oh my God, everything. Everything is so frozen. The fork is actually frozen into the ground. I accidentally left it out here a couple of days ago. Wow. I won't be doing any digging today, that's for sure. Nope. So, this area where I've got the black sheeting up along the fence line, this is going to be my wildflower meadow. Well, up to, if the polytunnel's coming to here, and well, around about here, it'll give me a bit of a back area, just so we can access the back of the polytunnel as and when needed. And then the rest will be filled with wildflowers. Oh, I've also got a whole range of other flowers and seeds that I really do need to start getting in, because there's a lot of the seeds that I need to start in heat in January to get them to actually grow. But the flowers will be going all the way up to the top where that bin is. That's going to be a whole border of different flowers. I'm trying to select ones that are really good for pollinators and ones that are easy to grow. Now, growing from seed is a hell of a lot cheaper than buying them as individual plants, but it also comes with its own challenges. Most of them at the moment have to be started on a little bit of heat. So hopefully in the next day, when I go to do my chili pepper seeds, I'll actually be building my own little heated propagator, which should be big enough to sow all the seeds that I need to sow that need that heat to germinate and be efficient when it comes to costs. But we'll just see how that one works out. So in between different areas, there's also going to be some more plants as well. I've started taking lavender cuttings last year, and I've got different rosemaries, and I've got other bits and pieces to go in at either the end of the beds or through the wood chips on the path area. And that's the great thing about the wood chip paths. It provides a really good growing area for your plants if you want to mix it and soften those edges. Which is what I'm really hoping to do this year. Oh my goodness me. Now at the top you got the back bed, which I grew some of the beans and peas in last year, and then I've got the raspberries, and then I'll be creating a bean bed in the next month or two. I'm actually probably going to dig it over. It's not going to be a no dig bed for this year at least, but that's going to be there. Where the pallets are, from roughly the fence line all the way to almost the hoop, that will be for my corn. I love growing corn. I think it's spectacular looking. It really does look really structural on your plot, and it also tastes great too. It's really, really good at storing too, either in the freezer or canning if that's what you really want to do. But it really doesn't change the taste. And we are still eating our corn from the freezer that we grew last year. So I can't wait to do that, and having a larger area to grow a little bit more corn, I actually can't wait to get that started. But obviously it's far, far too early to do it yet. Now there's a lot of compost on that area anyway, but there is sections that I actually haven't got. And where I grew the corn last year, I've actually put in a big thick layer of leaves and grass about 2 months ago. So this is the area where I've got the leaves and the grass mulch underneath. Now, I wasn't going to cover it in plastic, but the foxes were throwing it around left, right and centre. And I didn't have enough netting to do anything else with. And I was actually going to lift up the plastic, but it's pretty frozen solid. But under there, there's about 3 to 4 inches of leaves and grass. Now, I'll see how it rots down, see how it gets incorporated into that soil below. If it doesn't, then it will just be dug in, and it will be extra nutrients for the soil to slowly start breaking down over the next year. But it should be absolutely fine to plant into. Now, if it's not past that kind of decomposing, if it's not past that decomposing, if it's not fully decomposed or it's still a little bit warm, then it will be scraped off and added to the compost heap. But I was going to start digging it in about a month ago, but one thing or another didn't get around to doing it. But it's quite a nice big area for corn, and obviously we'll have squashes growing through it too. Now, talking of squashes, we're going to have, I think this one long bed here is going to be full of squash, and we'll probably train it to go through the corn area and go up growing that way. And obviously our hoop, our vertical growing area, which will be mainly for squashes, that will be another squash area too. Now, I love growing my squashes through my corn because it actually does help reduce some of the weeds. So that's hopefully what I'm going to intend to do this year, is again grow squashes that grows through that corn. Oh my goodness me. Both the corn and the bean area that we're going to have, that is going to probably be dug over and added this year. Next year we'll probably go no dig once we get a little bit more compost. But we've only got 2 bays of compost left, and we've still got to do the polytunnel top up on that particular polytunnel, and obviously to create the new beds in the new polytunnel, plus top up the other greenhouse bed. So I don't want to leave myself too short. So if we get any leftover at all, that will go onto the new bean beds. As for the structure I'm doing for my beans this year, because I'm trying to grow much taller varieties, because I really enjoy picking from taller varieties. The dwarf ones are great, but they really, really hurt my back last year trying to harvest them. And because you don't want to pull the plant up to harvest all your beans, because you will get 2nd, 3rd or even 4th flushes on that plant, I want to go for a little bit more height this year. But hopefully where it doesn't end up on its side like it did last year. Now, in this lower area, right next to the greenhouse, we had some, tarpy kind of trampoline matting down for a long time. Right from when we first took on this plot, because it was always somewhere where we wanted to put a new bed. But last year we didn't have enough compost to do it. So what we've done is I've moved this little bit of raised bed border from where my old strawberries were, because that area is just flooding far, far too much. And to be honest, I really struggled with how much water was actually getting into that bed. So we've moved it over here for now. Now, we didn't need to use this raised bed, but it just means reusing it means I don't have to get rid of it or store it anywhere. And I don't like to see waste. So I've managed to peg the corners down and tried to get it as straight as what I could possibly tell. I'm not one for perfection. I just like to get on with it. And we've just filled it with some old compost and old bags that we actually had that we weren't going to use for anything else. Also, the compost from the old strawberry bed has actually been dug up and moved here as well. Now, it's only a couple of inches deep, but I think for this year I'm actually going to grow some flowers and things into this area. Not quite sure yet exactly what. We're going to put some plants and things in here, I think. We may grow some crops, but I haven't quite decided on that just yet. Oh, but it's a nice little additional bed, and we're creating more and more beds as we go. And then I think by the time next year happens, I think we'll be able to create and expand an awful lot of beds on these plots, giving us even more growing areas. It's that cold, even the comfrey tea is frozen solid by several inches by the looks of it. Now, I want to give you a little sneaky peek of our new chicken run. Now, it's nowhere near finished. We have got to put the chicken wire on yet. And we've got a lot of other jobs. Now, we've got to cover the bits of pallets on the sides and do the whole of the roof with netting to make sure that it's really, really secure. Now, when I say netting, I mean a real good, strong, fox-proof, high-gauge wire that they're not going to be able to get through. And unfortunately, that costs a lot more money. Now, I'd love to be able to do it with normal chicken wire, but it really, really isn't strong enough to go against a fox attack. Not when they're really, really determined. Now, a lot of people, you might say, well, the foxes aren't going to be able to get on top of this high arch. I mean, it is quite a high area. But we have the end. But we do have the end of our compost bays there, and it has got a roof. And I'm pretty sure without any issue whatsoever, a fox could easily get up on top of that and jump over onto that netting and actually just tear a hole through it. Now, foxes, you're never going to be able to 100% fox-proof your chickens, but we want to give it a go as much as possible. Now, once we've covered this whole area with the chicken wire or the good, strong fox-proof mesh, we will be making sure that we're digging down the bottom areas, down the sides, and making sure we're burying chicken wire, basically in an L shape, so the foxes can't actually dig through to the bottom. What areas we don't do that with, we'll be putting heavy paver slabs down, quite a few feet, well, a foot or two distance away from the edge of the pallets, so the foxes have a much harder time trying to dig in. Now, as for the coop, I'm not going to show you yet. It's something I've been working on with really bad scraps of wood, and I'll show you on a later video what that looks like. But it's not going to be the prettiest of things, and I think I might have to jazz it up a little bit with a bit of paint. But at this time of year, trying to paint anything outside is just not a good idea. It needs to be above 10 degrees really for the paint to actually penetrate and dry properly. Otherwise it's just going to peel off. So that will be something ready for the early spring. Now, this is the area where my strawberries were. They've all been removed now and all been replanted elsewhere. And I've got some left over for some pots that I will be having scattered around everywhere because, come on, let's face it, strawberries aren't the cheapest things to grow, so I'm not going to waste anything that I've managed to grow for this year. All the runners I really do want to make the most out of, but that's the only bit of area I've got left from that strawberry bed now, which will be backfilled and covered with some more wood chip. Now, we have had a delivery of wood chip over the last, I think it was about almost a week ago now. And as you can see, it's a little bit lighter in places. I know it's quite hard to see because obviously there's frost all over everything. But we freshened up a lot of areas. Now, this is the first proper frost that we've had so far this year. And it really, really is frozen. There is no way I'm going to be digging anything in this weather. But I've already managed to clear most of the beds. And it has had a really good weed as well. Now, I don't know what's going to happen for this growing year. I don't know whether we're going to have a successful year or not. But hopefully, you never know, it may turn out to be really good. Now, last year, considering all the issues that we actually had kilos and kilos and kilos of produce. So this year I'm going to try and get myself some scales to try and show you how many kilos of fruits and vegetables that we can actually grow on this plot. And hopefully it'll be one more step towards being a little bit more self-sufficient. So that's it for today. It's very cold and my batteries do not want to last more than a few minutes at a time because it is just so cold. It's fantastic to feel the heat of that sun, but it is really, really bitter out here. And luckily today there is no wind. So that's what we've got up to. There's a lot of the areas that is actually cleaned and tidied up, an awful lot more. We have got rid of a lot of stuff that we do not need anymore. And it's much more open. But I'll still feel better after we've finished the coop and used the last of the resources for that and the new polytunnel. And then hopefully there won't be anything left. So guys, it won't be long before we start that new growing season. And it really does go very quickly. So what are you up to at the moment? Have you got any plans for the very near future? Let me know in the comments. But I'm going to go and have a nice hot coffee and see if I can not warm myself up a little bit. And hopefully I'll see you in the next video.